So with us today we have Alastair, who directed the film Climbing Blind. Now our audience today comprises of media game students and some other courses. Climbing Blind is quite an amazing film. I don't think there's anything else like it, a man climbing who's blind. So tell us, who is Alastair?
Who's Alastair? I'm Alastair, and I guess I'm here because of this film, which is kind of doing quite well. But essentially, I am a rock climbing and adventure filmmaker, and the key thing I suppose to understand is that even though I've had brushes with the TV and film world, and this film is having those brushes, it's been sold to the BBC, it's going in independent cinemas, I'm actually not really from the film and TV industry. I'm very much a filmmaker who's from the outdoor industry, if that kind of makes any kind of sense. And ultimately I set off travelling around the world when I was very young, in my kind of late teens, early 20s, got into rock climbing at the same time and fell in love with the lifestyle and the sport, and I suppose very, very quickly decided that this was what I wanted to do in my life and I wanted to somehow make a living from that. So I tried being a professional climber, turned out surprisingly wasn't quite good enough. So I turned, I suppose just naturally, I got into photography, which in turn, after years and years led to messing about with video cameras and making films. And that's, fast forward kind of 25 years, and here I am as a professional filmmaker, but very much from the outdoor world.
So what sparked your interest in rock climbing at a young age?
Well, I suppose, like a lot of young people, I was looking for something that fulfilled me in life, that really, I found really exciting, and I think a lot of the prescribed paths that were out there, or certainly 25 years ago when I was in the education system, it seemed very draconian to me. I think things are much more diverse now. The kind of courses you're doing now didn't really exist when I was at college. It was either you do sciences or you do art, but art just meant drawing or painting. I was never, I wasn't very good at anything like that. So I hadn't really realised I was a creative person at that point in my life. And I knew I had a lot of energy. I was physically very fit, but there was nothing that I felt really at home with. And I actually worked at a place called the Thompson Centre in Burnley. It was one of the best sports centres in the country, actually. But they had to knock it down because of asbestos or something. Anyway, and it was a guy I was working with there introduced me to rock climbing, and it was really, it was a seminal moment. In the first time I went, I fell in love with the sport, and I really felt, well, this is something that seems to bring together not only a lot of my own physical strengths, but a natural kind of enthusiasm for being outside and being near rocks. So it was very much, it was a bit of an epiphany, let's say. The first time I went climbing was a real wow, this is something that's been missing from my life and really brings together a lot of my own strengths.
So do you have any future projects planned outside of the world of rock climbing?
Outside of the world of rock climbing? No. Short answer to that. No, I think that's always been my goal, and something I've always kind of stuck to, that really the films I make are always, one way or another, they're loosely, and I think this is the important thing. So the films, whilst they're about rock climbers or mountaineers or adventurers, that's very much the backdrop to the human story. What I'm always looking for, and what all filmmakers should be looking for, is the human interest. What can we all relate to about this story or this character? What's fascinating for the wider audience? But I suppose really the answer to your question is, no, there's nothing outside of the adventure world that I'm doing at the moment. But really, what am I doing next? I don't know. And to be honest with you, I've never known what I'm doing in the last 25 years. I've never really had any idea on the basis, on the kind of like here and now, what am I doing next week or tomorrow? I can't remember what I did yesterday. So I never really know what I'm doing, but I know what my philosophy is, and I know what I'm trying to achieve. Yeah.
So diving deeper into that, what kind of challenges did you face while making Climbing Blind, and how did you tackle them?
So one of the things, so I won't give too much away because obviously we're going to watch the film, so I don't want to give any spoilers. But the main character of this film, a guy called Jesse Dufton, who's, for all intents and purposes, he's completely blind. He has, in scientific terms, 1-3% central vision, but that's only light perception. And we talk about that in the film, but basically he's blind. But he's kind of a special guy. He's a special character, not only in how well he climbs because of his blind, but just his attitude in life is something that we can all kind of learn from and take inspiration from. And the first time I went out with Jesse, the main problem really, and this is just a problem with filmmaking really, is how do you get what the story you're telling or what you're trying to get across to come through the lens? Because what you might know in your head or what you might suspect or the story you might have in mind doesn't just naturally jump through the lens. It requires certain direction and skills to make that happen. And the thing with Jesse was he was just so damn competent at climbing. When I filmed him for the first time, I was kind of amazed, at the same time quite deflated, because he was really good at climbing, and the deflating part was really you couldn't tell he was blind. So that's good and bad, because that's extraordinary. He's so competent at this, and he's climbing like someone who's sighted, but where's that leave the film if we're just watching someone who I'm telling you is blind, but actually when you're watching it you're like, well, I can't really tell, so is the story coming through? So the challenges were, how do I come up with methods in the scene selection and the direction so that we really got it? And I won't give it away, but you'll see there's a couple of kind of devices, I suppose, that we use in the film to really try and hammer it home exactly what Jess is experiencing as a blind climber. Yeah.
So when you were first starting out in media, what kind of did you do to break away from the rest of the crowd? Like, do you have any advice for our young directors?
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I suppose I'd always seen myself as a bit of a maverick in life, a bit of a rebel. I kind of dropped out of almost everything I ever started, and I just kind of set off on this kind of almost vagabond style lifestyle of travelling and climbing. And the successful part of my career that people are looking at and relate to now is a relatively recent thing. I spent a lot of time kind of on the face of things what people would see as failing, but for me it wasn't. It was a success because I was enjoying my life and doing what I wanted to. But really, I mean, I suppose I'd always broken away, and as I say, I ended up being a filmmaker from the outdoor world rather than a filmmaker who was, got involved with big budget films. Or a lot of successful directors start by making TV ads, but I was never part of that world. I mean, if that world's for you, then good luck to you. I'm sure that you'll make a hell of a lot more money than I ever did, and if it works for you, great. But really, I suppose the point is that everyone in this room will have their own unique strengths and set of characters and circumstances that no one else in the world can compete with. There's only you, that's you, and everyone is unique and has their certain strengths. And I think the thing to do in whatever career it is I mean, there might be certain people here, and maybe people here thinking at the moment they're going to have a career in media. There'll probably be a certain percentage of you that end up doing something else, and that's just the way it goes. But those that are in media might have a certain perception of what you want to do. Maybe you don't, maybe you're still figuring it out. And I think that's the key thing, is not to feel too pressured about deciding I want to be A, B or C. Some people know, a lot of people don't. And a lot of people never really work it out. But the key thing is to not get too sidetracked by preconceptions of what a career or the world or a course says you should be doing. Really, you've got to just find what your own strengths are, and it might take a longer amount of time, but you probably will find yourself in a much stronger, happier place by kind of sticking to those strengths, and that just requires a bit of self-belief that you won't always get from sitting exams and kind of doing courses. But really, I suppose that, that's what I did in the end. That's how it all. But it was a long time coming. It's kind of easy to look back now and kind of wrap it up in a few short sentences. But it's a long and rocky road, or it was for me. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be for you, but that's my answer. How did I ever break off? Well, I'd always broken off, and just through a desire and passion of wanting to somehow make a living from what I was doing, that unfolded all these things that I realised I really enjoyed and was good at as well, which they too often go together. Normally when you're good at something, it turns out you enjoy it as well.
So as a director directing Climbing Blind, surely you made a lot of mistakes, and could you learn from their mistakes and then apply it into future projects to make yourself better as a director?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, everything, certainly in the creative world, but I just think in life in general, life's full of mistakes. The person who doesn't make mistakes is the person who does nothing, and that's like a cliche, but there's a lot of truth in it. And I think perhaps I've been making films for 15 years, and in all those films there's been good things and there's been bad things, and there's been things where I've used too much music in some of them, and there's been some where I've used too much interview footage, and I've probably used too much slow-mo footage in some of them. So it's all been a learning process over the years, but hopefully there's been enough good things about the films that they've still managed to connect and be successful on some level. So specifically with this film, I don't think I did make that many mistakes. I'll probably look back in a couple of years and tell you what those mistakes were. You're not always aware of them when they're going on. It takes time. And for example, there's a job I actually took a break from my kind of own filmmaking career a couple of years ago and worked as a director of photography on a German cinema documentary. I thought it'd be something different. I thought, let's give it a whirl, working in the actual industry. The short of the long is that I hated it, and I was extremely bored. The length of the takes we were doing was mind-boggling. The length of time I was standing with the camera on was just way longer than if I was directing myself. And I hated the whole process, and I had to quit the job. And I hadn't quit anything in all the projects I'd done. I'd always seen through to the end. And at the time, it felt like a disaster. But it was only a year or so after that, or probably a year and a half, and I was kind of halfway through making Climbing Blind, that I realised that I had actually taken something from that experience, and I had learned a little bit about how to really capture the essence of someone's reality for the purposes of documentary filmmaking. But at the time, I wasn't really aware. I was just aware that I didn't like the people I was working with. This German director was doing my head in, and these takes were too long and it was way too hot, and I just kind of had this big list of complaints. But a year or so later you look back and you go, oh, hang on a minute, that's what he was trying to do. Whilst maybe I didn't appreciate it, or my ego was too big at the time to really let that sink in or to take that on board, after the fact you're like, oh, hang on a minute, yeah, that was actually there was some positive I could take from that. So probably the same for this film at the moment. I think it was all executed pretty well, but that's only because I've spent 15 years making films, and kind of everything we needed to do in this film, I could pull it off fairly competently.
So, being a director, if you could direct any film, what would it be? Or are you more focused on one specific genre?
I suppose I'd love to. Okay, so I'm on one hand, I'm really happy with the films I make. That's why I make them. And I wouldn't really want to be involved in any other world. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And as I say, I've had a few stints that I've made the odd commercial. I've done bits of director of photography for other bigger budget films. And for me, it's not all that. And what it actually did was underline why I love doing what I do, and why I love the way I can keep total creative control, but it's just a lot more fun with a small team. There's a lot of things to love about it. But at the same time, yes, I would love to would love to have some budget, say, I don't know, probably a few million, which is actually not much for a real big budget film, and make some kind of just a minimalist kind of survival story, but that was all shot really cinematically, had a really good screenplay. Something a bit like Castaway, to be honest, like that, but with a mountaineering backdrop. I suppose that's the film that I'd still like to make, and hopefully that'll happen one day. But that requires a bit more than the bits of kind of outdoor sponsorship funding I get for the things I make at the moment. That requires some kind of fairly serious money.
Okay, so thank you for coming into Burnley College and having this interview.
How did you take your film from like a really cheap screen production to winning awards and actually making it something quite big?
I think the key thing is to make sure you're really passionate about what you're doing, and that you're really interested in either the story or whatever you want. I actually started, one of the first films I made was a sketch show with a mate of mine, and we did all the acting and script writing, and we did all the effects and all this stuff. We put all this work in, and actually that did win a couple of things, but it was basically a massive failure. We it didn't do anything. It didn't land as this TV series. We were kind of deluding ourselves that it would. But I suppose the key thing is not to be put off by failure and expect success to come instantly. And I think a good Churchill quote is the definition of success is going from one failure to another without loss of enthusiasm, which is essentially my career. And we've just, like I say, we've hit the bit now where there's some success, but there's been an awful lot of, it depends how you define success and failure as well. But yeah, if you're looking at awards and money, then I get that's what people think success is, but it isn't really. Success is making sure that you're happy in your life and you're enjoying what you're doing. And from that perspective, all my films have been a success, even though loads of them were, failures.
Who's your favourite actor?
Who's my favourite actor? Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of good ones, isn't there? DiCaprio, perhaps. Brad Pitt. Or Daniel Day-Lewis, I suppose. Probably for like really proper acting.
Did you always want to be a director?
No, not at all. I never really knew what I wanted to do at all in my kind of teens and early 20s. Just felt like a lot of energy for things, and it's just an accident I ended up making films. It was just a product of wanting to make a living through climbing. I ended up doing photography. I ended up used to do a lot of slideshows. So no, I didn't always want to be a director. Like I say, it's kind of an accident.
You look up to any other directors?
Do I look at any other? Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I suppose at the moment, I'm a big Kubrick fan. I suppose if you want to get into filmmaking on any level, there's an awful lot you can learn from the great directors. Just the way the use of music and the way they edit, the way they cut things, that can be applied to whether you're making something on your phone or whether it's a $1 million budget Hollywood film. But I suppose at the moment, Christopher Nolan would be my favourite director. Just done Dunkirk, did the Batman films, did Inception, did very interesting director. And if you look back at his early work, check out Memento. It's a really mind-boggling film. But he's really clever in his use of time, which is a really interesting thing to take on board as a filmmaker and as an editor, to realise that you're dealing with the fragmentation of time. It's a really important thing to get your head round, and he really very cleverly manipulates that in the way he kind of constructs his stories and uses time in his films. Yeah.
Whereabouts the hardest station ever like?
Probably the most remote and biggest and hardest was something called Ulvatana, which was in Antarctica, and I was on board the first, it was actually the first British expedition to go to that area, and the climbers I was with made the first ascent of the Northeast Ridge, which was like a mile long ridge, which two sections of it, 2 500-metre sections, so you've got nearly 1 kilometre of vertical rock on this mile high ridge, in the middle of nowhere. So.
Would you say being a director is hard or easy?
It is neither. If it's what you wanted to do, then it's a dream job. and it's hard and easy. But I mean, if you think it's easy, then you're probably not doing it right. I would say.
What is your favourite directing role to date?
My favourite directing role. You mean what I've actually made? Well, probably. I mean, Climbing Blind. I'm really pleased with, and it was really enjoyable to make for a lot of reasons. But I suppose that, and then I made a film called The Asgard Project, which was about the first ascent of a big wall on Baffin Island in the Arctic, which had a lot of crazy stuff going on. The climbers skydived into the area, they kicked all the kit out of the aeroplane, which was kind of parachute dropped onto the glacier, and then when they climbed this 1,000-metre wall, they wingsuited off the top, and it was one of those trips where everything seemed to go wrong, and we had all this fairly bulky advanced kit to shoot it all, and it turned out to be, it was a life-changing thing. It was a huge film for me at the time. It was very successul. Again, it was the first thing I think I'd ever kind of sold to TV. So yeah, the Asgard Project. Check it out online if you've not seen the trailer. It's a good hoot. And Climbing Blind, I would say.
Do you coach climbing?
Do I coach climbing?
Yeah.
Only to my kids.
Did you have any qualifications when you started this film? Oh no, not any films when you first started.
Qualifications, like specific ones, no.
Any relevant to filming?
No, not at all. No. I mean, I got some GCSEs, but you'll find that once you, especially the more you move through life, that really it's a lot more about experience, and and if you're good at what you do and you're passionate about what you do, that will shine through and kind of trump everything else.
Do you do your own editing as well?
Yes, I do. Yeah, which is a bit So I farm out things like graphics, the grade, the sound mix, the scoring. And it's great in the world we live in. So the guy who does the music lives in Vancouver. I've never even met him. He's been doing the sound design and the original score for me for about the last 4 years, and I've still not met the guy. And he's in Vancouver. We talk all the time, but because it's with the internet, that's the thing to embrace. There's negatives to the internet and about the way the world's changing, but there's always opportunity and there's always advantages as well.
Some say his favourite film is The Rock, but all I know is his name's Alastair and he's here to play a pool table challenge. Begin.
If you were stranded on a desert island and you could only have 3 things with you, what would they be?
A much more stable pool table and a full set of balls and some chalk.
An obvious question, Ryan. My mum and I are big fans of I'm a Celebrity. What would you do? I'm a Celebrity?
Would I do it? No.
Yeah.
No. Well, I think everyone says they wouldn't do it, but ultimately it looks like if you're a celebrity, you end up being skinned.
Yeah.
You do it.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't even do it.
Yeah, no, it's horrible. God, this table.
What's your party trick?
What's my party trick?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm drunk. What's going on? No wonder that guy couldn't. I thought he was really good, the other guy, but you've duped him. My party trick. Oh, I don't know. I can play quite a few classic acid house tunes from 1989 on the piano. Not a piano in here, is there? Don't bring a piano up. It's not true.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs, I suppose. But I don't like pets.
What skill would you most like to have?
Right now, you don't even need me to answer that, do you? The ability to play pool? I mean, what's going on?
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Oh, Star Wars.
Yes.
Of course, yes. Of course.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
I'm a night owl, which is a nightmare because I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And
Is your second toe longer than your big toe?
Well, did one go in? Same length.
Same length.
Same length.
If you were an ice cream flavour, what would you be?
Vegan, for a start. Any of that baby cow growth fluid in you. Otherwise known as milk. Chocolate chip or something, or cookie dough. Quite something sweet, like they all are. This is the worst table I've ever played pool on.
If you could meet anyone, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh, I don't know. I hate questions like that.
Yeah.
Right, this is going in. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because every time I try and play a shot, the horizon wiggles.
Yay!
Oh, I don't know. It'd be interesting to meet kind of like. Oh, no, next question. I'll come back to that.
Biggest fear?
Biggest fear. This nightmare that I was playing pool in front of a room full of students. Well, I'm often quite scared when I'm filming, so I do have a fear, an inherent fear of dying with my work because it is very risky, and that's really and the dangers there are really obvious. But actually, I think that's what keeps me alive. But I suppose the biggest fear is, when I get involved in a project, it failing or people not responding to something that I've made in the way that I think it will. I think that's any kind of creative or artistic person's biggest fear, really. Oh, Stephen Hendry.
Would you rather be an unknown superhero or a famous villain?
What? That's another one of those questions, isn't it? It's like just got no basis of reality. Alright, I'd be an unknown superhero. That's the.
Why?
Why? Because who wants to be a famous villain? Well.
Next question.
What's the weirdest question you've been asked?
It's the weirdest question I've been asked. Probably the one about the toes. I think.
Would you rather sleepwalk or sleep talk?
Oh, come on, since that hasn't gone in. I don't know, walking would be interesting, wouldn't it? See where you end up. It would be a little bit more dangerous, but I always lean towards risk.
If you could only eat one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Or bananas, probably. That'd sustain you, wouldn't it?
Why bananas?
Why bananas? Because they've kind of got a lot of stuff you need. Pretty easy to. That's a flute, wasn't it? and the table. It's definitely not that.
Whereabouts in the world is your next project going to take you, or where do you want it to take you?
I don't know, because I don't know what I'm doing yet next. Right, here's a chance to just smash it, as he says. Oh, it nearly worked. Nearly worked. Whoa. Oh, I might be going to Saudi Arabia with Leo again, actually.
You like spiders?
Do I like spiders?
Yeah.
No.
You're not alone there.
But I don't mind them. I'm not arachnophobic. I don't. I have a mate who's arachnophobic, and he just totally freaks out whenever he sees one. And I was on a trip in Venezuela where there were massive tarantulas. Like about that big. And they'd be like under the hammock when you go out in the morning. But the thing about most all these creepy crawlies, anything that's dangerous, sharks even, the exception to this is the brown snake and the polar bear. But pretty much all wildlife, even wildlife that's dangerous, it's much more frightened of you. The vast majority of attacks and things are where, particularly like brown bears and stuff and snakes, where you stand on the snakes, you get bitten. The snake doesn't go as a human there, I'll go and bite him and chase you. Brown snakes do. Brown snakes will chase you for like miles. It's very scary. And polar bears, once they sight you, will sniff you and track you for days and hunt you. But pretty much everything else, spiders included, will just run away because they're frightened of you. They've got their own instincts to survive.
Have you ever been stung by a bee?
Yeah, I suppose so. Oh, come on. Every now and then.
Would you rather be the strongest person in the world or the fastest person in the world?
Well, no. Fastest would be good, wouldn't it?
Can you stand on your head?
Yes.
Can you do like acrobatic things? That's what it's called. But you know, backflips and stuff.
No,
Yeah,
no, I can stand on my head.
Have you ever broken a limb while falling from a climb or climbing?
I've never broken anything. But I have taken I've taken an enormous fall once. In New Zealand, I fell 7 metres onto my backside, and I fell on the kind of the nubbin of a root of a tree on my right buttock, and I had a compressed spine and a gluteal hematoma. Luckily, I landed on my right buttock rather than my coccyx, which would have probably shattered my spine, and I ended up with just a very bruised and damaged muscle, and what was normally about 8 inches of spine was 4. But ultimately, I still somehow didn't break anything. And I climbed with some doctors later in that trip, and they couldn't believe I hadn't broken anything. So I've been lucky. I think I've got strong bones, but I have had a few scrapes. But ultimately, no, I've not broken anything. Tap it very lightly. It's hard. Keep the camera school, mate. What was that? 34 or something?
33.
Oh, smashed the record. Smashed it. You're the top ball leaderboard. Well done. No problem.